All right, video number 3 is all about natural monopolies. A natural monopoly can be identified by having a socially optimal output where average total cost is still falling. So these are the only monopolies that we want to keep around. Everything else is actually bad for our economy. But at this point, you can see here, socially optimal is where sneaky supply or marginal cost is equal to demand right there. So it's this point right here. Didn't have to highlight that, that was already highlighted. So that's our socially optimal quantity. And notice at this point, average total cost is still going down, even if it's ever so slightly. We know it's still going down because it hasn't quite reached its minimum ATC point, which is over here, right? We see that this quantity, where MC equals ATC, the lowest possible cost, is to the right. In other words, this business, this firm has the ability to produce exactly what society needs at the lowest possible cost. So we want to keep it around because they have incredible economies of scale, they have incredible mass production techniques that make their costs astronomically low. However, if we leave these unregulated, let me go back real quick. So you want to be able to clearly identify these because they won't always be called a natural monopoly. You have to know that it is. And the way to do that is notice our marginal cost does not look like it normally looks. It's not this little swoosh, right? So in order to make this work, you kind of have to stretch it out a little bit. And notice the same thing's true about our ATC. ATC is not a bowl. ATC is more like this. The biggest indicator is right here. MC equals ATC to the right of our socially optimal quantity. You can identify that, you'll know a monopoly when you see one, or natural monopoly when you see one. Okay, now the problem is they can do this, but they aren't going to. They would rather produce at the socially optimal quantity. Profit maximizing quantity, which is where MR equals MC right here. So this is going to be their quantity, and if left unregulated, they will have a price that's way up here, right, indicated by the demand curve. We'll call this P. And then their costs will be right here. Call this ATC. And then they will have a pretty large profit as a result. The reason they will produce there if left unregulated is this how they maximize their profits. But we want to keep a natural monopoly around. Normally, we do have to regulate it. And the way we regulate is with price ceilings. We do not do it with taxes because taxes will decrease our supply or increase our costs, which will lower our quantity, which is the opposite of what we want. We actually want more. Our problem is we want a higher quantity. So we have to manipulate it with price ceilings in order to do that. So let me show you these price ceilings. Our first price ceiling that we can do is called a fair return price ceiling. Fair return price ceiling is when I draw a price ceiling that intersects where ATC equals demand, right? So it's going to be this point right here. Now, whenever I draw these, I always find the point first and then I draw the price ceiling. It just makes me feel a little bit better, right, that I'm drawing the right one. It's going to be here because when my price is right there, we call this price ceiling or PC. When that's my price, then my marginal revenue no longer matters, right? Now is simply my price. And at this point, this is my quantity down here. At this point, my price and quantity, my total revenue is this box here. And my total cost is the same box. In other words, at fair return, TR equals TC. What that means is I have an economic profit of 0. We call this a fair return. It lowers the price, increases quantity. I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I'm better off than I was before. People are paying a lower price than they normally would, and there are more of it available. I'm not quite at socially optimal amount. But this is normally what governments tend to do because this allows for the firm to still experience a positive accounting profit when they have 0 economic profit. We call it a normal profit. So that's fair return, where our total revenue and our total costs are equal is always going to be when we have a price ceiling at the point where ATC and demand are equal. All right, we have a second price ceiling that we can do. Change the colors for this one. Our second price ceiling is going to be socially optimal. And that means I'm going to intersect where sneaky supply and demand are equal, or MC and demand are equal. So it's going to look something like this. That's going to be my price. That's my price ceiling. So I'll call it PC. And at this point, my total revenue is going to be price times quantity. Right here, it's a smaller box. total costs are going to be larger than that. They're going to be up here, that's ATC. In other words, I'm going to experience a loss, right? If I maintain this, I'm going to produce at a loss. It's going to be right here. And again, remember, marginal revenue doesn't matter now because I have a price ceiling. So we're not at disequilibrium, right? So we have a big loss here. And the problem here is if I do a price ceiling like this, monopoly doesn't have firms entering and exiting the market to take care of this loss. The loss will persist for all of time unless something changes. And so that means if they have these losses, we need to subsidize these monopolies, natural monopolies, in order to keep them in business, right? So whenever you do a socially optimal price ceiling, you have to subsidize to offset the loss that is inevitably going to happen. All right, so keep that in mind. Unregulated, our price is going to be up here. Call this U. If we're doing a price ceiling that is a fair return, we'll call this FR. It's going to be where ATC and demand are equal. And then if I'm going to do a socially optimal, call this SO, is going to be where demand equals sneaky supply or marginal cost. So know those 3 points and you should be in pretty good shape. And then finally, make sure you know that when you do socially optimal, it's going to be a loss and you'll have to subsidize. All right, I hope that was helpful.